Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, to accepting to do this interview with the Voice of America.
I'm happy to do it. Thank you.
You have concluded the Global Diaspora Week with lots of events within the United States, throughout the United States and outside. Can you please tell us what the key priorities of the Global Diaspora Week were, and what were you able to achieve this year?
We had several different goals in doing our diaspora outreach this year through the Office of Global Partnerships. In the past, one large forum was done. It was a Global Diaspora Forum. It was here at the State Department. It lasted about a day and a half. It was a great event, great speakers, great panels. When I arrived a year and a half ago, it had occurred to me that there might be people we weren't reaching because of the difficulty of getting to Washington. So we had this idea that we might go out to where the people were. We partnered with universities. We partnered with some other major organizations like the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Sister Cities International, and we decided to take this discussion of engaging diaspora at the local level. And so first goal was to reach more people and reach them where they lived. Second goal was to get people, diasporans, to start thinking about ways to be active in their communities here and at home. And one of the ideas on that is a Global Diaspora Note, and I can talk a little bit about that later, that we're working with the Calvert Foundation on. But just ways to be active, ways to think about remittances differently, ways to invest, ways to communicate.
So I guess this is one of the reasons why the Obama administration in 2011 launched this program, because diasporas have always been an integral part of the American society. So why was there a need to have a special program to engage them?
Well, from you're absolutely correct. From the very beginning, we are a country of immigrants, and diasporans have a major impact on business, on government, on religions, as we talked about earlier. You name it, every part of society. So it's like everything else, it's a constantly evolving science, engaging diaspora, and I think that the more you can attract, the more you can engage, and the more you can find use for people to invest and make impact in their communities. Diasporans are what we call first movers. They know what's going on at home. So from a political standpoint, they might be able to have information that we as a government might not have. In a humanitarian crisis, which we've seen, unfortunately, too many of in recent years, they are the people that connect us with rapid response. And they're sort of the eyes and ears, I think, for all of us as to what's going on at home and what's going on in our individual communities here in the U.S.
Absolutely. I'm going to come back, if I may, to their maybe political influence and impact, and also trade and business. But I would like to ask you about the diasporas here in the United States. What type of data, do we have anything in depth on different diasporas? Some are large, some are more active, some are less active. And what type, I mean, you covered a bit, but what type of impact they can have, and how important is their role in U.S. communities?
The statistics are constantly changing, but if you went to a place like the Migration Policy Institute, that's one source that can give you some fast figures on where people live and where they come from, and sort of over the time periods of how they got here. But that's constantly changing because this is a very dynamic group of people. Diasporans, we find large populations in places like Minneapolis, where there's a large Somali population. We talked about the Iranian populations that exist on the West Coast and on the East Coast. Some have academic links, some have business links. A lot of the African populations tend to cluster. In the Washington, D.C. area, there's a large amount of Eritreans and Ethiopians. It's very inexact as to why they come, but it's usually the first few come, and families arrive thereafter. They get involved in business, they get involved in politics, they get involved in the community, and they tend to cluster.
So mainly it's for economic reasons that they come to the United States, or educational, less political?
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, I think there's certainly some flight and refugee impacts here, but I do think that economic opportunity, educational opportunity are very primary drivers of this.
Now, based on what you just mentioned, how would you rank the Middle Eastern diasporas in the United States?
Well, I mean, they're very, Middle Eastern diaspora in the United States, I think, they're very active politically. They're very active in business. we talked briefly before we came on about sort of my hometown of Boston, and I remember a very vibrant Middle East population from when I was very young. That's only grown as the influence, I think, of our universities and our health industry in Boston has grown. So you'll see, you see sort of clusters on the coasts of large populations, Middle Eastern, African, and otherwise. And then, again, using the Minneapolis example, the Somali population has settled there. So it's sporadic as you go into the middle of the country, but very large populations on either side.
On either side. You and the program, you are trying to engage this diaspora, different diasporas. Is this a two-way traffic? And is there a mechanism for you and for this whole project to listen to what the diasporas have to say? Absolutely. As part of this tour, we did the diaspora tour we did that started in June and just concluded last week. We did 12 stops. The majority of them were at universities. There's a talking head program as part of that. I would do some speaking. We'd have a panel that talked about different, and representing different communities that would talk about different ways to engage, different ways to invest, different ways to be influential. And then we'd have a question and answer, pretty robust. Depending on where we went, we had very robust question and answer periods. How could these groups provide maybe some kind of guidance to policymakers in the government on foreign policy matters? Sure. And is it important for someone like you to listen to them on these issues? It's very important. And as I said, they can, diasporans can be and often tend to be our sort of first movers. They're people we can tap into. If we want to find out what's going on at home, they can help us. They usually have different channels of communication, different ways of news gathering, and that's one way that we tap into it. It's very important to foreign policy because these people are Americans, and it's not a question of, it's a question of they're our partners in this, and they can help us as we engage this global world. You mentioned also trade and business. How could they provide help, or how could you provide help for them for opportunities in trade and business? So our office is, we're a great convener, and that's our power, Secretary's Office of Global Partnerships. And I've actually made a joke, and it goes over pretty well, that we're a bit of a dating service, and that we take different parts and we put them together, and hopefully something good comes of it. We help people network. We provide great networking opportunities as part of these forums, and we stay in touch. We actually have so we manage with Calvert the International Diaspora Engagement Alliance out of our office, and that is just because we had Global Diaspora Week last week, just because we concluded the tour, which lasted about 4 months on and off. Our work is always ongoing with diaspora, and we're going to get sort of more involved with investing and looking at economic opportunities and ways to impact diaspora communities here and abroad. Can you explain, sir, about Calvert? You mentioned at the very beginning of our discussion. The Calvert Foundation is they're a not-for-profit investment group in Bethesda, Maryland, and when we were sort of exploring the new direction, how to have this different kind of discussion with diaspora populations, we brought in Calvert to manage the IDEA partnership, the Diaspora Engagement Alliance, and one of the things they're helping to develop is diaspora notes, real investment mechanisms to impact at home. We don't want to talk about taking away remittances, but we do want to talk about where there is an opportunity to maybe steer some remittances or to have a discussion with people. And these are real investments. Calvert has a proven record of, I think, 100% rate of return on over $1 billion of money they've invested over the years. So this is a real top-notch operation, and they have great contacts, and they're very excited about this. We're now exploring developing those first notes, those first investment mechanisms. So it's a pretty big deal, and I think, again, like I said, we don't want to take away remittances. Remittances are very important, I think, especially to familiar relationships, and depending on where you might be from, that could be a very primary source of income. We don't want to take that away. I think I think there's, in developing countries, 50 billion perhaps in remittances in 2013. That's a lot of money. Is there more? Can it be invested? Can we take some of that money and invest it in different places? We want to help countries with projects at home, and people want to do that. Do you have any particular messages for, let's say, the Middle Eastern diaspora in the United States? Well, continue to be engaged, continue to be leaders. I think the Middle Eastern diaspora
is very influential in our academic communities. And academic, this is the reason why we chose universities as part of this, because they have natural diaspora populations there to begin with, student groups or other groups that cluster around them. You know, they're diaspora, a very robust part of any university community. And I think, as much as I said we're a convener, universities are an even better convener.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.